from the underground.
Hello, welcome to The Underground. This is the podcast where we talk about the world and how crazy and weird and messed up it is. I'm your host, Duncan Michael McPherson. Today, I want to talk about a book I'm reading, and the point I want to make is that narrative shapes reality. So I think that's what I'll name the video. But I'm reading this book by Chuck Klosterman. Actually, it's supposed to go like this because it's upside down, but it's called But What If We're Wrong? And it's really about how we are really bad at telling what the future is going to be and predicting the future. So like he uses the example of Moby Dick, was not popular at all in its time, kind of sat on a shelf for 30 years, or I don't know how long. I think it was like 30 years until it found popularity. And now it's known as one of the greatest books of all time, right? So that's what he kind of talks about in the book. And one of the things that I took from this book so far, and I'm just starting it, so he might get here, but is about the narrative and how much narrative drives how we perceive reality. Like when we the narrative of the day is how we perceive the past and how we perceive what is going to happen in the future. And because the narrative is constantly changing, that's why we can't predict the future. So what I wanted to do today is kind of compare this, not compare, but relate it to COVID. So if we look at COVID right now, we can see how badly like bad actors like Fauci and Joe Biden are trying to control the narrative. Even Doug Ford and Justin Trudeau as well in Canada. But they're trying to control this narrative. And it has nothing to do with science, right? We look at the activity, doing activities outdoors should be safe. And we've been locked down from activities outdoors, which makes no sense with the science. Anyway, there's a lot of things I disagree about the science with that I've talked about before, but the narrative doesn't go along with science or facts, or this is the most shocking, is things that they said in the past. Like when Fauci said we shouldn't wear masks, and then he said we should wear masks. That vaccines. So the vaccine thing is interesting. I just saw a video on this today about Biden and Kamala Harris and all these liberals saying that they wouldn't take the vaccines because Trump was in power and they were worried about the vaccines when Trump was in power. So when Trump's in power, the narrative that they're saying is that vaccines are not trustworthy. Now that Biden's in power, obviously they're trying to push everybody to get it and even forcing people to get it. So the overarching narrative is that the left, the liberals, are the heroes and they're going to save you and they're right and they're good. And that's the overarching narrative of this whole thing. And it doesn't matter what's happening in the real world because that's the narrative. So if Trump's in power and they're not, and Trump's the one in charge of the FDA and, creating vaccines and all that, then all of a sudden vaccines are something to be skeptical and hesitant with. But now that Biden's in power, even though nothing else changed, it's something that you have to take and it's going to save the world and all that. So what I want to say is that if you don't have principles to fall back on about what's right and what's wrong, you're just lost in the sea of narrative and whatever they say. And it's a lot like 1984, the Newspeak and the Truth Police and all that stuff. Is it Thought Police? I forget what it's called. But anyway, it's a lot like that where you're just on the sea of narrative and they are in control of what you believe. So what I want to say and what I want to end with is that I think narrative shapes the world more than the world shapes the narrative. And so we see that with the vaccines, right? The science isn't shaping the narrative. The narrative is shaping their perception of the science. And I think that's a huge problem, which I want to talk about and expand on more. Hey, thanks for listening to The Underground. Please subscribe on YouTube and like and share it on social media if you'd like to see more content like this. Thanks, everybody. Bye.